Hi friends, I'm Parvez and welcome to my another video on building chatbots using Rasa Open Source and also Python. But before that, now this video will be a 2 hours training course, but if you're interested on a complete course on building chatbot with Python and Rasa Open Source, then you can join my complete course on Udemy. I've added the link in the video description and you can join this course, and there are different topics about Rasa Open Source and Python like introduction to Rasa and Conversational AI, understanding Rasa NLU, building video chatbot and API calls, advanced NLU techniques, Rasa forms, fallback and human handoff, Rasa and MySQL database, deploy Rasa chatbot on different platforms like Facebook Messenger, Slack, Telegram, WhatsApp, and Rasa and Flask integration. Now this course will be regularly updated. So if you want to join this course, then I have added the link in the video description and you can join this course. So now let's start our video. Welcome to the first video of the course on Rasa Open Source and Python. In this video, we will explore the fascinating world of conversational AI and understand the role of Rasa in building conversational applications. Now let's get started. So first of all, what is conversational AI? Conversational AI refers to the technology that enables machines to understand and respond to human language in a natural and interactive manner. It allows users to have conversations with machines such as chatbots or virtual assistants as if they were communicating with another human being. So let's talk about the key components of the conversational AI. Now, to build effective conversational AI systems, we need two key components. The first one is natural language understanding, or NLU, and also dialogue management. Now, NLU focuses on interpreting and extracting meaning from user input, including intents, it means the user goals or purpose, and entities, it means relevant pieces of information. On the other hand, dialogue management is responsible for managing the conversation flow, deciding the appropriate responses, and maintaining context throughout the introduction. So you will know that we are going to use Rasa. Now let's talk about the Rasa. So what is Rasa? So Rasa is an open source framework specifically designed for building conversational AI applications. It provides a comprehensive set of tools, libraries, and development resources to create chatbots and virtual assistants. With Rasa, developers have the flexibility to design and customize conversational flow according to specific requirements. So now we have two types of Rasa. The first one is Rasa Open Source. So Rasa Open Source is an open source conversational AI platform that enables users to build chatbots and virtual assistants capable of understanding and holding conversation with users. It provides tools for natural language understanding, or NLU, and also dialogue management. And it allows developers to create contextual assistants on different messaging channels and third-party systems through a set of APIs. Now, there are some key features of Rasa Open Source. The first one is natural language understanding, or NLU. So Rasa NLU helps the platform understand user messages and extract relevant information to determine user intents and entities. Another one is dialogue management. Rasa core is responsible for holding conversations with users and make decisions based on previous interactions and guiding the flow of the conversation. Another one is connect messaging channels. Now, Rasa Open Source allows you to deploy chatbots and virtual assistants on popular messaging platforms such as Facebook Messenger, Slack, Telegram, Twilio, and many more. And also custom conversational channels. Now, developers can also connect Rasa-based assistants to their own custom conversation channels or voice assistants, and it enables flexibility in deployment. Now, Rasa Open Source is free to use, and it is open source nature enables developers to have full control over their machine learning models and the flexibility to customize the pipeline for NLU and dialogue management. Now, on the other hand, we have Rasa Pro. So now, Rasa Pro is commercial pro code offering of Rasa that is specifically designed to cater to enterprise needs related to security, observability, and scalability. It's an extension of the Rasa platform and is tailored for organizations and businesses that require advanced features and support in their conversational AI projects. Rasa Pro provides additional functionalities and tools beyond the capabilities of the open source Rasa framework, and this makes it suitable for large-scale operations and enterprise-grade conversational AI projects. Now let's talk about some of the key features and benefits of Rasa Pro. So the first one is enhanced security. So Rasa Pro offers robust security measures to protect sensitive data and ensure compliance with enterprise-level security standards. Another one is advanced observability. So Rasa Pro provides improved monitoring and analytics tool to gain insights into the performance and behavior of chatbots and virtual assistants. Another one is scalability. So Rasa Pro is optimized to handle high volumes of interactions and seamlessly scale to meet the demands of large organizations. And the last one is enterprise-grade support. So users of Rasa Pro receive dedicated and proactive support from the Rasa team, and ensuring smooth deployment and ongoing maintenance of their conversational AI applications. So now let's talk about some benefits of using Rasa. So there are several advantages to using Rasa for conversational AI development. Rasa offers flexibility, and it allows developers to define their own NLU models, dialogue policies, and custom actions. It's also scalable, capable of handling both small-scale and enterprise-level applications. Additionally, Rasa's open source nature allows for community contributions, and this makes it a vibrant and constantly evolving framework. Now let's talk about the Rasa architecture. It will be briefly. So as we already have talked about this, so Rasa architecture consists of two main components, Rasa NLU and Rasa Core. So Rasa NLU handles the natural language understanding tasks such as intent classification and entity extractions. So right now we haven't learned about intents and entities, we will talk about that, but it learns from annotated training data to accurately interpret user inputs. Rasa Core takes care of dialogue management, using a machine learning based approach to decide the next best action based on the conversation story. So now Rasa has been successfully employed in different industries. So let's talk about some real world cases. So for example, in customer support, Rasa chatbots can handle frequently asked questions, provide support documentation, and even solve complex issues to human agents. In healthcare, Rasa can assist with appointment scheduling, symptom analysis, and general medical information. And in financial institutions can use Rasa for banking inquiries, account balance checks, and transaction history retrieval. So now to begin your journey with Rasa, you can access the official Rasa documentation, which provides detailed guides, tutorials, and examples. Rasa also has an active community forum where you can ask questions, seek assistance, and connect with other developers by leveraging these resources. You can quickly dive into the world of conversational AI with Rasa. So now you have a solid understanding of conversational AI and the role of Rasa in building conversational applications. In upcoming videos, we'll dive deeper into different aspects of Rasa and explore how to leverage its power to create intelligent chatbots. In this video, we're going to provide a comprehensive overview of Rasa, an open source framework for building conversational AI applications. We will explore the key components of Rasa and their functionalities, and giving you a solid understanding of how Rasa works and how it can be utilized to develop powerful chatbots and virtual assistants. Now, we already have talked about some of them, but let's recap that in more details. So the first key component is Rasa NLU, or we can say natural language understanding. Now, Rasa NLU is responsible for understanding and extracting structured data from user messages. It involves two primary tasks: intent classification and entity recognition. Intent classification aims to determine the intention or purpose behind a user's message, while entity recognition involves identifying important pieces of information, such as names, dates, or locations within the message. Now, for example, let's say you're building a customer support chatbot for a travel agency. Now, a user might send a message like, I need to book a flight from New York to London on July 15th. Now, in this case, Rasa NLU would classify the intent as book flight and also extract the entities like New York. This will be the source, London will be the destination, and July 15th will be the date. So another one is Rasa Core. Now, Rasa Core is responsible for managing the dialog flow and making the chatbot context aware. It enables the chatbot to hold meaningful conversations with users by tracking the conversation history and deciding which actions to take based on the current state and user input. For example, let's consider a food ordering chatbot. After a user expresses the intent to order food, Rasa Core keeps track of the dialogue and responds accordingly. If the user provides a specific food preference later in the conversation, Rasa Core ensures that the chatbot understands and responds appropriately, offering relevant menu options and checking for the availability. So here, let's check that how these concepts work together in the food ordering chatbot. For example, Rasa NLU processes the user message, like I want to order a large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese. Now, Rasa NLU extracts the intent, like order pizza, and entities like size large, type pepperoni, extra toppings, or extra cheese. Now, Rasa Core tracks the dialog history and identifies the current state of the conversation. So another key component is Rasa Action Server. Now, the Rasa Action Server is a component that handles custom actions and generates dynamic responses based on the chatbot's logic. Now, custom actions can perform tasks such as calling external APIs, querying databases, or performing calculations. The Action Server connects the chatbot to these external services and provides the necessary data for generating responses. For example, let's say you're building a weather chatbot. When a user asks for the weather forecast, a custom action in the Action Server can be triggered. The action can make an API call to a weather service, retrieve the forecast for the requested location, and provide the information back to the user as part of the chatbot response. Now let's make all together in a weather chatbot, for example, Rasa NLU, Rasa Core, and Rasa Action Server. Okay, so for example, in here you can see the user say, what's the weather like in New York City? Now the user sends the message to the chatbot. What will be the message? So what is the weather in New York City? Now in here, the user sends the message to the chatbot and Rasa NLU processes the input. So when for example, Rasa NLU processes the input, there will be intent like inquiry weather, and the entities will be location New York. Then Rasa Core receives the processed message from the Rasa NLU and identifies the appropriate action to take based on the intent and conversation history. A custom Rasa action called action get weather. So after the first step, so Rasa Core, in the second step, a custom Rasa action called action get weather is triggered. This action is responsible for making an API call to a weather service to retrieve the weather forecast for the specified location, for example, New York City. And the action get weather action calls the weather service API with a provided location like New York City. Now, the weather service API returns the weather forecast. So after calling, it will, for example, return the weather forecast for New York City. Like today, it will be partly cloudy, for example, with a high of 75 and a low of 60. Okay. And then the action get weather action formats the weather forecast. After returning that, it will format that information into a response message. And then Rasa Core sends the response message to the user. What will be the message? The chatbot will say, for example, today it will be partly cloudy with a high of 75 and low of 60 in New York City. Now, the user might respond with additional questions or comments, and the conversation continues with Rasa NLU, Rasa core, and custom actions, handling the dialog flow and providing accurate weather information based on the user's request. Now, this way, the weather chatbot is context aware as it tracks the conversation history and can handle different user queries related to the weather forecast for different locations. The custom action enables the chatbot to interact with external services like the Weather API and provide real-time and relevant information to the users. So another component is Rasa SDK. So now the Rasa SDK, or we can say Rasa Software Development Kit, allows developers to extend the functionality of the Rasa by creating custom components and implementing complex business logic. The SDK provides a set of tools and utilities for building custom actions, creating domain-specific chatbot behavior, and integrating external systems. For example, imagine you're building a chatbot for an e-commerce platform. You can use the Rasa SDK to create a custom component that handles payment processing. The custom component can interact with the payment gateway API, validate payment details, and return the payment confirmation status to the chatbot for a seamless transaction experience. And another one is Rasa X. So Rasa X is a tool, even though we will not work on Rasa X in this course. So Rasa X is a tool designed for collaborative bot development and model management. It provides a user-friendly interface for training, testing, and iterating on chatbot models. Rasa X also allows you to collect user feedback and integrate it into the training pipeline to continuously improve your chatbot's performance. For example, when deploying a chatbot using Rasa X, you can invite team members or stakeholders to review and annotate conversations. They can provide feedback, correct misclassified intents or entities, and suggest improvements. Now, this collaborative feedback loop helps refine the chatbot's training data and enhance its accuracy over time. So now we can say that these concepts form the core components of Rasa and enable developers to build sophisticated and context-aware chatbot applications. Each component plays a crucial and important role in understanding user inputs, managing dialogue, executing custom actions, extending functionality, and iteratively improving the chatbot's performance. Until now, we know about some core concepts of Rasa. Now in this video, we will learn how to set up the development environment for Rasa so you can start building powerful conversational AI applications. Before we dive into creating chatbots with Rasa, it's important to ensure that we have the necessary tools and dependencies installed on our system. This video will guide you through the step-by-step process of setting up your development environment for Rasa using Python. Now first we will discuss the prerequisites for working with Rasa. Now you will need to have Python installed on your machine, so preferably version 3.6 or higher, so it should be higher. I'm using Python 3.9. So we will also explore the importance of using a virtual environment to isolate our project dependencies. Also, we're going to use PyCharmID for our project, so if you have not downloaded, you can just download that from jetbrains.com. So next we will walk through the installation of Rasa. Now Rasa provides a simple command line tool called pip that allows us to install the necessary Rasa components and dependencies with ease. We will cover how to install Rasa Open Source, which includes both Rasa NLU and Rasa core. Once Rasa is installed, we will create a new virtual environment specifically for our Rasa project. This virtual environment will help us to keep our project dependencies separate from other Python projects on our system. Even though when you're using PyCharmID, when you create a project, it will automatically create a virtual environment for you. Also, it ensures a clean and controlled environment. So, for example, when you're using virtual environment. Now, to ensure that our development environment is properly configured, we will run a quick test to verify that Rasa is installed correctly and working as expected. We will use a simple command to launch the Rasa shell, where you can interact with a chatbot and test its basic functionalities. By the end of this video, you will have a fully set up development environment for Rasa, ready to start building chatbots and exploring the exciting world of conversational AI. Now remember that having a properly configured development is important for smooth and efficient development. So follow along with the step-by-step instructions in this video to ensure you're all set up and ready to go. So now let's do it practically. So I already have mentioned that you should have a PyCharm ID, so you can just go to the jetbrains.com and you can download that. So there are two versions. We are using the community and free version. Okay, so I already have created a project at name of Rasa course with the virtual environment. Now how you can create this, you can just go to the file. After that you can just go to the new project, and in here, so you can see that we have previously configured interpreter. If you choose this, then you will not have any virtual environment. If you choose this, so new environment, then you will have a virtual env. Okay, so you can choose one of them. So I have used this. You can just give the name of the project, choose a virtual environment. After that, choose the location of the project, click on create. The project will be created. So I'm using Python 3.9, but you can use any version. It should be above 3.6. So after creating of the project, so you can just give these informations. So make sure that you choose this new environment using, and you can just click on create, then the project will be created. So you can see that we have our virtual env and that's created. So after that, what we want to do, we want to install Rasa. Okay, so in here at the bottom, you can see that we have something that's called terminal. So you can just click on this. The terminal will be opened. So that's the virtual environment. Now it is automatically activated. You don't need to activate that in PyCharm. Now in here, we can just use pip install Rasa. Okay, and after that, hit enter. And it will take a little bit. We need to just wait for the complete installation of Rasa. All right, now all packages has been installed. So now if I say Rasa -- version, and you will see that we have the Rasa version, yeah. And you can see that this is the Rasa version, this is the Rasa SDK version. We're using 3.6.4, the latest version, and we have the information about the Rasa. Creating a new Rasa project is the first step toward building powerful conversational AI applications. In this video, we will walk you through the process of setting up a new Rasa project from scratch and allowing you to unleash the potential of chatbots and explore the exciting world of conversational AI. Now, there are two commands that you can use for creating Rasa project. Now, we have Rasa init and we have Rasa init -- no prompt. Now, the Rasa init command is used to initialize a new Rasa project. It sets up the directory structures and creates the necessary files for your chatbot. Now, when you run Rasa init without any additional flags, it will prompt you with a series of questions to configure your project. It will ask you for the project name, whether to include example trainings data, which NLU pipeline to use, and other configuration options. This interactive prompt allows you to customize the setup of your project based on your specific requirements. On the other hand, Rasa init -- no prompt is a command that skips the interactive prompt and uses default settings for the project initialization. It sets up the project with predefined configuration, including example training data and pre-selected NLU pipeline. This option is useful if you want a quick way to get started without going through the interactive configuration process. By using Rasa init -- no prompt, you can get a basic chatbot project up and running more quickly, but you will have to modify the generated files and configurations manually if you want to customize them later on. So for right now, we are using this -- no prompt because we want to just test the chatbot, and after that, in the next videos, we will use the Rasa init. So now let's do it practically. So right now you can see that we already have installed Rasa and we have our project. So in here I can just, first I need to just create a directory in here. So let me just create a new directory. Let me just say first project, for example. We can just name it cd first project, and inside this first project we want to create our chatbot files. So I can just say rasa init dash dash no prompt. Okay, after that hit enter. So now it will create our project, and let's just wait. So you can see that it's not asking me anything. So for example, give your project name or which directory you want to create. Do you want to train your model or not? It's directly training the model. So training an initial model, and it's just creating a project for us, a chatbot for us that we can just start asking the chatbot. So let's just wait for the, now it will train the model automatically. There's nothing. You can just say Rasa init no prompt. Then it will do the job. It will create the project. It will create the chatbot files. It will train the chatbot with some basic training examples. And let's just wait. So we should wait for the first time. So because it's training the model. So you can see finished training components. Okay, so your Rasa model is trained and saved in here. So right now, if you see in here, the project is created and we have some files. Don't worry about these files. We will talk about these files. But right now, let's check that we want to just open a Rasa shell to just interact with this chatbot. So right now you can see it's starting server on this, and you will see that we have some files, but right now you will not know about these files. We will talk about this. So just let me open nlu.yml. So you can see that we have some training examples, like for example, if I say hello or hi, then the chatbot will respond for that. Or for example, see you, goodbye. Okay, so these are built in, and don't worry about this. We will talk about this. But right now, let's just test our chatbot that it's working or not. All right, now you can see that the bot is loaded. And okay, so now if I say hello, for example, this is something in my greet intent. And you can see, hi, how are you? Now this is the respond from the chatbot. So for example, we can just say, let me just say, are you a bot? So are you a bot? Okay, so this is something that will be in our bot challenge. So are you a bot? So you can see that I'm a bot powered by Rasa. And for example, if I say I'm sad, so I'm sad. So you can see that here is something that cheer up. There's a link. You can just check this link. Did that help you? So you can see that this is a basic chatbot that's created in Rasa. Don't worry about these files and training examples. We'll talk about these in the later videos. When you create a new Rasa project using the Rasa init no prompt command, it generates a default project structure with several files and folders. Now let's go through them one by one. So now if you see, this is my simple Rasa project, and at the top you can see that we have an actions folder. Now this folder contains the custom actions for your chatbot. It includes an actions.py file where you can define the logic and behavior of your custom actions. You can add more files for additional actions as your project grows. So after that, we have another folder that's called data. Now, this folder stores the training data for your chatbot. It includes some main files. Now, the first one is nlu.yml. So now this is the important file. And if I just go at the top, so now this nlu.yml, this file contains the training examples for the NLU, or we can say natural language understanding model. So we will talk more about these files, but right now, take a note that NLU, this file contains the training examples for the natural language understanding model. So now you can see that at the top you can see that we have version, so version 3.1. After that we have NLU, and in here we have intent greet. Now in the Rasa, an intent represents the intention or meaning behind a user message. It's a way to categorize and label the different types of user inputs or requests that your chatbot needs to understand and respond to appropriately. Now, within the nlu.yml file, you define intents by providing training examples like this that represents different variations of user message for each intent. Now, these training examples should cover the range of ways a user may express a particular intent. For example, let's say you're building a chatbot for a pizza ordering service. You may have an intent called order pizza, which represents the user's intention to place an order. Now, in your nlu.yml file, you would define this intent along with several training examples. Now, right now, if you see in here, we have different training examples. For example, we have intent greet. We have the examples like hey, hello, hi. Now, this is for example, the words that the user will ask from the chatbot. So, for example, if a user say hello, then the chatbot will respond something. Okay. So, for example, if I say hello, so it will call this intent greet. Okay, because this is our training examples in our nlu.yml, and you can see that we are receiving hey, how are you? Okay, now what's this response comes from? Now there is something that's called domain.yml, so let me just open. Right now we haven't talked about that. So in the domain.yml, you can see that we have something that's called user greet. Okay, so it means that when a user says hey, hello, hi, or for example, good evening, good morning, or for example, good afternoon, then this user greet will be called. Okay, so now for example, if I say good morning, now let me just copy this. If I say good morning, and you can see that we're receiving how are you. If I say good afternoon, okay, good afternoon, so we have the same response. Okay, so because this intent is our greet intent, and we have some training examples like hello, hi, and when a user, for example, asks from the bot or tell for the bot that hello, then it will give this response. Okay, so if I come down, you can see we have goodbye, and for example, this goodbye is related to, if I see, we have user goodbye. So for example, if we say these keywords like goodbye or bye, so for example, goodbye, then we will see bye. Okay, so for example, if I say have a nice day, have a nice day, then it will say goodbye or bye. Okay, and you can see that we have intent affirm and we have deny. So these are some pre-built or predefined training examples. You can change this. Okay, so there's no problem. You can change these intents. You can add your own intent, or even you can change these response. Okay, so we will talk about this, but right now now we need to focus on the files that we have in here. So for example, we have goodbye, we have affirm, we have deny, we have mood great. Okay, so if I say, for example, great or amazing, then it will say great, carry on. Okay, so if I say my domain.yml, if I see, so in here you can see that we have something like this one, user happy. Okay, or for example, if I say are you a bot, so if I come down, we have a bot challenge. If I say, are you a bot, then it will say that I'm a bot powered by Rasa. Okay, so if you see my domain.yml and the domain.yml, we have yeah, user I'm a bot, so it's telling that I'm a bot powered by Rasa. Okay, so now this was the NLU.yml and also domain.yml. We will talk about this more. So after that, so we have something that's called rules.yml. Okay, so let me just open this. Now the rules.yml, this file includes a rule-based conversation. So rules define specific conditions and actions to be executed when those conditions are met. You can use either for example, the .yml, and here we are using .yml. And if you see in here at the top, we have version, so version 3.1, and we have the rules. So when you're creating the rule, so first you should have the version, after that the rules. Inside the rules, you can define the rule. Okay, so now you can see that the rule is created using the rule key. Now the steps field, you can see we have a steps in here. The steps field specifies the sequence of steps to be followed. In this case, the rule states that if the user sends a message with the intent goodbye, so with intent goodbye, in this case, the rule in this case, the action user goodbye should be executed. Okay, so for example, if the user say bye or goodbye, then the user goodbye will be executed. Now, if you see the action, so this is the intent and the NLU.yml, we have that intent. So this is the intent goodbye, and for example, if the user say goodbye or for example bye, or some training examples that are inside the goodbye intent, then the user goodbye action will be triggered. So this is the user goodbye. If I show you, so it will say bye. Okay, and also the same, we have another rule. So for example, if anyone say that I am a bot, okay, so this is the rule, and there are some steps. Okay, so we have intent, so the intent is bot challenge. Now if you see the NLU.yml for the bot challenge, so if the user, for example, says, are you a bot, are you a human, am I talking to a bot, am I talking to a human, then the rule, what rule will be, what action will be, so that this user I am a bot. Okay, so if you come down, so this is that I am a bot powered by Rasa. Don't worry, you will know about these concepts more practically when you have created more projects. Right now we are going to just give some description about this. So you can add more rules to the rules.yml file to cover different conversational scenarios and define how your chatbot should respond in each cases. Now, the rules.yml file is important, but not much important. Okay, so another thing that is more important alongside with the NLU.yml and domain.yml, that is stories. Okay, so this is the important file. Now the stories.yml file in your default project contains a story examples that represents different conversational paths or scenarios between the user and the chatbot. These stories are used to train the dialogue management model in Rasa. Okay, so right now you can see that in the stories.yml we have some stories. Okay, so we have the version at the top. After that, we need to write the story. Okay, so the first one is the story path and what will be the steps. Now it's like rules, if you see rules and also stories.yml, but we will use stories a lot. Okay, we will talk about the difference between the rules and stories.yml in the later part, but right now you can see that in here we have the steps. Okay, so for example, we have intent to create. It means that when the user asks from the bot or say to the bot, for example, hello, hi, or if you see in NLU.yml or for example hello there, then what will be happened? Okay, so this is the place that stories.yml will configure. Okay, so stories.yml tells to the chatbot, for example, when the user says hello, hi, then an action will be triggered that's called user create action. Now the user greet action is defined in domain.yml. Okay, so what will be that? That will be, hey, how are you? So this is the case, for example, and here if I am saying, let me just use another one, like for example, hey dude. Okay, so for example, if I say hey dude, okay, so let me just open. So this is the intent greet, means that we are this hey dude is related to the greet. If I hit enter in here, now in here you can see the action user greet will be triggered, and the user greet is that, hey, how are you? Okay. Also we have intent mode greet. Okay, so this is another one. So if I open the nlu.yml, if I come down, we have something that's mode greet. Okay, so for example, if I say perfect, okay, so perfect, then what will be happen? The user happy action will be triggered. Okay, so now let's check the user happy, and that is let me just come down, user happy, great, carry on. Okay, and also if you see, we have another, you can just define more stories. So for example, we have another story, this is sad part 1. Okay, so for example, the user will say hello. Okay, so this is another story. After that, the user greet will be triggered, that is, hey, how are you? And after that, we want to say that, for example, mode unhappy. So if you say nlu.yml, we have for the mode unhappy, we have something like I'm sad. Okay, I'm sad. Now when we are saying that I'm sad, then this mode unhappy intent will be triggered, and this will be the response. Okay, so if you see in stories.yml and the mode unhappy, if the user says, for example, I'm unhappy, or I'm sad, or for example, my day was horrible, I'm disappointed, then this user cheer app will be triggered, and this is the place in the domain.yml we have. So this is the text, here is something to cheer up, and we have an image in here. And also so like this, we have user that help or affirm. Now this is the same. Okay, so we'll talk more about the stories.yml, but this was the basic of the stories.yml. Now we can say that these stories, so for example, that we have in here, or we can create, so serve as training example for Rasa's dialogue management model. So it's a dialogue management, and it helps to learn how to respond appropriately based on different user inputs and context. Okay, so this is the important point in here. So we will talk about this more after that. So we have something that's called models. Now this is the trained model that we have. This folder stores the trained models of your chatbot. After training, Rasa will save the trained model, including NLU and dialogue management models, in this folder. Okay, so it is this is the folder. Okay, our model. So we have another folder that's called test folders. So this is the folder. Now this folder is used for testing your chatbot. It includes so test stories.yml that you can use that. Okay, so it's just for testing. We will not use this much. And so this was the test folder. After that, we have config.yml. Okay, so this is the config.yml. Now this file contains the configuration setting for your Rasa project. It specifies the pipeline for NLU, the policies for dialogue management, and other training settings. Okay, so we'll talk about this more, but right now we're going to just close this. We have the credentials.yml. This file is used to configure the credentials for external service or APIs that your chatbot may need to interact with, such as databases, APIs, or channels, like for example a Slack, or for example you want to integrate your chatbot with Facebook Messenger, or for example WhatsApp. Then you can define those inside this credentials.yml. And this was the domain.yml. We already have talked about this. This is also an important file. This file defines the domain of your chatbot. It includes the intents. So if you see at the top, so these are the intents, the registered intents that we have. So if you see in the nlu.yml, when you create an intent in here, you need to register that intent in this section. So create, goodbye, affirm. So these are the intents that we already have. So in the NLU.yml, when you create another one in here, then you need to just register that in here. Okay. Also, we have entities, actions inside this domain, templates for responses, slots, and other configuration settings. You define the structure of the conversation in this file. We will talk about this more, but right now this is the intents, and these are the responses that we have for intent. So these are the responses that we already have saw, and we will talk about this more. Okay. And the last one is the endpoints.yml. So this file defines the endpoints for your chatbot, including the webhook URL, so for the custom actions and any external services that your chatbot needs to connect to. So we will talk about these files more, but right now we have just a basic overview on our Rasa project. In this section, we will talk more about the project structure of the Rasa. So, and also we're going to create our project using Rasa init. So now let's first create our Hello World project. So now in here, I'm going to create another directory. Let me just call it second project or whatever you want. And let's change directory to the second project. Now, if you remember that we have used Rasa init prompt for the project, and this time we're going to use Rasa init, and we already talked about the difference between the Rasa init and also Rasa init prompt. So I can just say Rasa init. So now using this, it will ask me for some, for example, the first one is please enter a path where the project will be created. So we want to create that in the default directory. Let me hit enter. And after that, it's telling me that do you want to train an initial model? So we don't want to train an initial model for right now, and we can just say no. Okay. So now the project is created, and it's telling that no problem. You can also train a model later by going to the project directory and running Rasa train. Okay. So right now we don't have any training model, and if you see, so in the second project, you can see we have the same folders, but right now we don't have any models folder in here because we have not trained the model. So we have the same actions.py file, we have our data, we have our test, and these are the files. Okay, so we are going to just open our nlu.yml. So we already have talked about the nlu.yml. Let me just briefly mention that it's a YML file used in Rasa to define training data for the NLU. Also, it contains examples of user messages labeled with their correspondent intents and entities. So right now you can see that we have the version. Now we are going to remove, for example, we can just remove. So as I've already mentioned that you can bring changes to this, so you can change the name. So for example, we want to leave the intent greet and the intent goodbye. So you can just, for example, add some training data in here, and we're going to remove this affirm, and also we're going to remove this deny, and also, for example, mode greet. So okay, so I'm going to remove these files because I will show you that even we are going to just remove this unhappy and even both challenge. Okay, so right now what we have the intent greet, we have the goodbye. So now we want to create another intent in here. Okay, so I can just say intent, and I need to give the name of the intent. For example, I can just say intent thanks. Okay, and or I can just make it like this thank. Okay, so now we need to give the examples in here. So examples, and in the examples now we need to give our examples. So now in here we need to give the training examples, like for example thanks, and for example thank you, and for example appreciate it, or like this. Okay, so now we have our training examples. After that, we can just come to the domain.yml, and that's because we have removed a lot of intents. And we already have mentioned that the domain.yml file in Rasa is an important configuration file that defines the domain of your chatbot. It provides a high-level overview of the chatbot's capabilities, including the intents, entities, actions, responses, and other configuration settings. Okay, so we have the version, and you need to specify the intents, but we have the intent greet, goodbye. We have removed these affirm, deny, mode, or mode unhappy. Okay, so if you've seen here, we have just greet, we have goodbye, and we have thank. So this is the new one that we have created. So what we want to do, we want to just remove these, and we want to just add the newest one that we have created like this. Okay, and also for the responses, we have the response greet, but we don't need this response because we have removed that. We're going to remove this response, the happy response, and for the goodbye, we have that. And also for the I'm a bot, and also we're going to remove this. Okay, like this. So now in here you can see that we have something that's called session config. Okay, and then there we have session expiration time and also carryover slots to new session. So now what are these? So let's talk about the first one. Now this parameter determines the duration of a session in seconds. And give an example, it sets to 30 seconds, 60 seconds, which means that if there is no user activity within the 60 seconds, the session will expire and the chatbot will start a new session when the user interacts again. And also we have carryover slots to new session. Now this parameter determines whether the slot values from the previous session should be carried over to a new session or not. If set to true, the slot values will be retained when a new session begins. An example, it is set to true, indicating that the slot values will be carried over to new sessions. So right now we haven't learned about the slot, we will talk about that. Okay, so now we have our inilio.yml, we have brought some changes, and also we have our domain.yml. Okay, so there's no problem, but right now we need another thing that's called stories.yml. We already have talked about the stories.yml, that the stories.yml file in Rasa is used to define the conversational flow of your project. It's an important file because it represents example conversations or dialogue between the user and the chatbot by specifying a sequence of user inputs or intents and the corresponding bot actions. Okay, so now the main purpose of the stories.yml file in Rasa is to define the conversational flow. So now what we need to do in here, so we need to define stories. So by defining these stories, you provide examples of how users may interact with the chatbot and expected responses from the chatbot. This helps Rasa dialogue management model learn and generalize from the provided training data to handle similar user inputs and generate appropriate responses. So right now you can see we have version, we have stories, and the step. Now if you see we have the greet, there is no problem. So if you see we have the intent greet, if a user say hello, then there will be something like user greet, this will be the action, and in the user greet we have hey, how are you? Okay, but we don't have the mode greet or mode unhappy, mode happy, because we have removed those. So we can just remove this. Okay, and we don't need that. So and here, so we can just remove this one, so we don't need that. Like this, even we can just remove this also. Okay, you can define the goodbye story in here. As I've already mentioned, we have something that's rules.yml, but the goodbye is defined in here. There is no problem. We are going to leave it like this. Okay, but we need to remove this bot challenge because we don't have that rule. Okay, we have just specified the one rule like this. You can bring this, for example, this intent in here. There is no problem, but right now that's in here, we can just leave it. Let me just bring that in here. We are going to remove the rules.yml. You can just remove it or you can just leave it in here. There is no problem. Okay, so now the important file is the stories.yml. So now we have, if the user say greet, then there will be a user greet. Okay, so now let's create another story. We want to create another story in here, so we can just say story, and I can just say express, for example, thanks, and let's define the steps. And in the steps, so we can just define the intent. So intent, so for example, user, for example, say thank. Okay, so for example, the user will say like this, thanks, thank you, appreciate it, many thanks. Now what will be the action? So we need to create a response for this. Now we need to create the response in the domain.yml. So we can just open this. We want to create a response in here. So for example, we can just say we can give a text, for example, you can just give it whatever you want. For example, I can just say you are welcome, it was my pleasure to assist you. Okay, so we can just give it like this. Now okay, so now for example, if a user says thank, what we want to do, we want to just say this one. So you're welcome, it was my pleasure to assist you. So we can just add that in here. So you can just say action like this. So you can just make it like this. Let me remove this. Okay. So now this is the storage.yml that we have in here. Now what we need to do, we need to just train our model. Right now we don't have any model. So in here I can just say Rasa train. So let's wait. So now you can see that we have an error. Okay, so in the training model. Now we can just go back, check that where is the problem. Okay, so let's just go back and we will see, because we have removed some. Okay, so you can see that it is not in the list. Okay, so now if I just go to the domain.yml, so you can see that's thanks. Okay, but we have another thing inside this. Okay, so it's like this. So let's just copy this and paste it in here, or we can change this to like this one, thanks. Okay, and also let's just change this to this thanks, and in the stories.yml we can just make it this. Okay, so now we can just train our model again. Rasa train. So you can see no story structure conflicts found. So again, you can see that we have an error, and if we just go back, so we want to track the error. Okay, so it's telling that thank is not in the list again. Okay, so now we can check this. So we have the storage.yml, we have the NLU, so like this, and then the domain.yml, we have user thanks, and this is the thanks. But why we are seeing this? Okay, so there's an indentation problem. Okay, so make sure that there shouldn't be any indentation problem. Okay, so now I think we are done. So let's just run it again. Train the model again. Now it's good. When you receive an error, you can just check that, and you will see that what is the problem. Okay. Again, we have the problem tank is not. Okay, that's problem. Okay, the intent tank is used in your stories, but it is not listed in the domain file. You should add it to your domain file. So stories.yml. Okay, so this is the intent tanks. Okay, so this is the intent tanks, and now we can just train it again. Okay, so we have created the NLU.yml, that's tanks. Now this was the problem. It was first tank. After that, I have changed to tanks. So we have some examples. After that, you need to define that in the domain.yml in the intents section. And after that, we need to create response like you're welcome. And in the stories.yml, for example, this is our intent and this is our action. Okay. So it's finished the training component. And now you can see your Rasa model is trained, and that's saved in here. Okay, so if you see in here, now we have our models, and this is the trained model. Okay, so now let's just check that this is working or not. So I can just say Rasa shell. So these are some warnings. There is no problem. So it's not related. It's related to Rasa. There is no problem. It's deprecation warning. So now the bot is loaded, and now let's just say hello. So now, for example, if I say hello, and if you see my stories.yml, if I say hello, then there will be user greet. Okay, so in the user greet, what we have, that is, hey, how are you? Okay, so you can see, hey, how are you? Now, for example, if I say thanks, okay, so if I say thanks, then there will be user thanks. So if I say thanks, and if you see the domain.yml, and in the domain.yml we have this, so you are welcome, it was my pleasure to assist you. And if I say bye, okay, so we have a bye intent in here, a goodbye intent, and we have that's defined in the rules.yml in here. There's no problem. You can define it in the stories.yml or rules.yml. So it is the rules is for the rule based. Okay, and we will talk about this rules more. And right now you can see that that's working. And if I say bye, so in the nlu.yml, so for example, we have see you later. If I write it like this, see you later, then it will say bye, because in here we have bye. And also in the rules.yml, if we say, for example, something from the goodbye intent, then there will be user goodbye, and user goodbye is, this is the text bye. Now let's talk about the rules.yml file. Now we already have talked about this, but now let's talk about this concept in depth. So now in Rasa, the rules.yml file is used to define conversational rules and control the flow of the conversation based on specific conditions. Now rules provide a way to handle dialogue management by mapping user inputs to specific actions or responses. Now the rules.yml file in Rasa is not always necessary for every chatbot project. Its purpose is to provide a more explicit way to control the conversation flow based on specific conditions or events. Now, there are some benefits of rules.yml. So the first one is explicit control over conversation flow. Now, with rules, you can define specific conditions or intents that should trigger certain actions or responses. This allows you to have more fine-grained control over the dialogue management of your chatbot. Another one is fallback and clarification handling. Rules can be used to handle fallback scenarios when the user input doesn't match any defined intents. You can define a rule to capture such cases and provide an appropriate response or take necessary actions to handle the situation. Another one is overriding default behavior. Now, by using rules, you can override the default behavior of Rasa's conversation flow. For example, you can enforce a specific action to be triggered for a particular intent, even if Rasa's default policies suggest a different action. And the last one is simplifying complex dialogue management. Now, rules can be useful when you have complex conversation flows that involve multiple intents, slots, or contexts. They provide a structured way to handle such complexity and ensure the desired behavior of the chatbot. Now, if you remember that we already have talked that we have another file that's called the stories.yml, and it's the same like rules.yml. Now, let's talk about the difference between the rules.yml and also stories.yml. In Rasa, both rules.yml and stories.yml is used to define the conversational flow and behavior of the chatbot, but they have some difference in their structure and purposes. Now, first, let's talk about the stories.yml, even though we will talk more in depth in the later videos. But the stories.yml is primarily used for defining example conversations or user interaction scenarios. It captures the different paths that a conversation can take, including user inputs, or we can say intents, and bot responses or actions. And in stories.yml, conversations are structured as a sequence of steps. We already have saw this now, where each step represents a user intent or a bot action. Stories can have multiple steps and can include different actions and intents in a specific order. On the other hand, rules.yml is used to define explicit rules or conditions that should be followed by the chatbot to handle specific user inputs or trigger certain actions. Rules provide a way to define specific control flows and logic for the chatbot's behavior. In rules.yml, each rule consists of conditions and actions. The conditions can be based on user intents, entities, or slots, and the actions define what the bot should do in response to the matched conditions. Now, let's talk about which one is important. Now, bot files are important for building a well-functioning chatbot, but they serve different purposes. We already have talked that stories.yml is typically used for training the dialogue management model and capturing example conversations. And it allows the model to learn from the data and generalize its behavior. It helps in modeling the natural flow of conversations and handling different scenarios. On the other hand, rules.yml is useful for defining explicit conditions and actions that should be followed by the chatbot. It provides more control over the chatbot's behavior and can be helpful in implementing specific business rules or handling certain edge cases. Now, the importance of each file depends on the specific requirements of your chatbot. In general, stories.yml is more commonly used as it captures the natural conversation flow, while rules.yml allows for more explicit control and customization. It's recommended to use a combination of both files to define the behavior of your chatbot effectively. So now you can see that this is the rules.yml. We already have talked practically about this, and we have our rules.yml, and you can see that we have just one rule. So when you're defining rules, you can just define the version, after that the rules, and inside that you can just define your rule. For example, you will have multiple rules. You can just create those rules in here. So for example, in here we have one rule, say goodbye anytime when the user says goodbye, and this is the steps. When the user says, for example, the goodbye, now there are some training examples in our goodbye intent, and if I check my nlu.yml, so in the greet intent, in the goodbye, not greet, so now you can see that see you, goodbye, see you later, good night, bye. If the user says this or asks these keywords from the chatbot, then the user goodbye will be triggered. Okay, so this is the action, and if we see the domain.yml and the user goodbye, we have the bye. Okay, so like this you can just define your rules inside the rules.yml file. In this lesson, we want to talk about NLU.yml file and also about entities. So now the NLU.yml, we already have talked briefly about this. So it's a part of your Rasa project's data directory and stands for Natural Language Understanding. It's used to define the training data for the NLU model, which is responsible for understanding user inputs and extracting relevant information. Now, how does it work? The NLU.yml file consists of intents, examples, entities, synonyms, and regex patterns. Intents represents the user's intention or purpose behind their message, while examples provide training data to teach the NLU model how to recognize and classify different intents. Now, what are entities? So entities represents a specific piece of information within user inputs, such as dates, locations, or product names. Or we can say entities represent important information that the chatbot needs to extract to understand the user's request accurately. For example, we have an example in here. In a restaurant chatbot, entities might include location, for example, date and number of people when a user makes a reservation request. Now, for example, in the user message, and here we have book a table for 2 people at an Italian restaurant in New York on Friday. Rasa would recognize the intents as a restaurant reservation and extract the following entities. We have, for example, a number of people, 2, cousin Italian, location New York, and date Friday. So now, what's entity extraction and how we can do that? So entity extraction enables the chatbot to gather important details from the user's request, which can then be used to generate appropriate responses or trigger actions, such as making a reservation, providing relevant information, or carrying out any other tasks. To enable entity extraction in Rasa, you need to define entity labels in your training data. You can annotate the entities in user messages using Rasa's Markdown format or JSON format, and provide examples for each entity type to train the NLU model effectively. So for example, in here we have I want to order a pizza, and if you see, we have food entity. Now the food is entity in here, and we are annotating that with the pizza. Okay, so for example, can I get a pizza? Food, and here again food is entity, and we are annotating with the pizza food. Now, what are synonyms? So in Rasa, synonyms are used to improve the natural language understanding or NLU of the chatbot by allowing it to recognize different variations of the same entity value. Synonyms are relevant, we can say alternative words or phrases that have the same meaning as the main entity value, but are written differently. For example, consider a chatbot for a weather application. One of the entities it needs to extract is city. So it can determine the location for which the user wants to know the weather. However, users may refer to the same city using different names or, for example, abbreviations. To handle such variations, you can define synonyms for the entity value city. So for example, in here we have what is the weather in New York City. So in here we have the city, this is our entity, and the New York, we are annotating with the New York. And for example, another user may ask that tell me the forecast for NYC city, so abbreviation of the New York. Okay, so this is the place that we can add synonyms. So now we can say that by defining synonyms in the training data, the Rasa NLU model learns to recognize these alternative phrases as synonyms with the main entity value. This improves the chatbot's ability to correctly extract entities from user messages, even if they use different ways to express the same information. Now, another thing is regex pattern that we can use in our NLU.yml file. And in Rasa, regex patterns, or we can say regular expression patterns, are used as a powerful tool for defining rules that can match and extract entities from user input based on specific patterns defined using regular expressions. So regular expressions are a sequence of characters that define a search pattern and helping to identify specific text patterns and user messages. Rasa uses regex pattern as a part of its natural language understanding or NLU pipeline. to extract entities that may not be easily captured using the machine learning based approach alone. Regex patterns can be particularly useful when dealing with fixed format entities or when you want to extract entities based on specific patterns or constraints. So for example, in here we have you can just define it like this in your inside the NLU.yml. So for example, regex, we can give a name, for example, zip code, and then we can give the training example. So now you can see that in the above example, the regex pattern 0, 9, and 5 matches any sequence of 5 digits which represents a standard US zip code. By defining this pattern, Rasa can identify and extract zip codes from user messages that match this specific pattern. Now, let's talk about the main purpose of NLU.yml. So, the main purpose of the NLU.yml file is to define and provide training data to the NLU model. It helps the model understand the user's intent and extract relevant information accurately. By providing different examples, entities, synonyms, and regex patterns, you can train the model to handle a wide range of user inputs and improve its accuracy and performance. Now let's talk about the structure of the NLU.yml. We already have talked about this. So now the NLU.yml file follows a YAML syntax structure. It starts with the version field, which specifies the version of the Rasa NLU format being used. For example, in our case, it's 3.1, and the main content of the file is organized into a list of intents, each containing the intent name and also a block of examples. Examples are represented as a list of phrases that represents user inputs corresponding to a specific intent. And entities can be also added to examples using markup like, for example, we can give the entity name and also entity values. We already have saw an example. And also synonyms are defined using the synonym keyword followed by a list of alternatives variations for the same concept, and the same for the regex patterns are also defined using the regex keyword followed by the definition of that. So this was the NLU.yml. So now let's talk about some additional tips. So it's important to provide a lot of training examples. So for example, when you are adding an intent, it is very important to provide a lot of training examples that cover different variations, context, and potential user inputs for each intent. Entities should be annotated within the training examples we already have talked, using the, for example, entity name and also entity value format to help the NLU model to recognize and extract the relevant information. And also regular expressions in regex patterns can be used to match a specific pattern and user inputs such as phone numbers, email addresses, or any other consistent format. Now, we can say that the quality and quantity of the training data in the NLU.yml file greatly influence the performance and accuracy of the NLU model. Therefore, it's important to always iterate and improve the training data based on real user interactions. By properly defining and structuring your NLU.yml file, you can train your NLU model to understand user inputs accurately, extract entities, and provide appropriate responses or actions in your Rasa chatbot. So now in here you can see that we have our simple chatbot. Now you can find the NLU.yml inside the data folder. So this is our NLU.yml. For example, we are going to create another intent. So let me just say intent, and this should be, for example, order pizza. So order pizza. And after that, we need to provide the training examples. Okay, so now a user maybe ask that I want to order a pizza, so like this, and the entity is food, for example, or for example, can I get a pizza, and the entity is food, and for example, I can just say I'd like to have a pizza, and the entity is food, and for example, let's order pizza and food, and we can say, for example, how about pizza and also food. Okay, so like this you can just define, you can just give the intent name, like for example order pizza, and you need to define the examples. Okay, so right now we are not going to train our model. So for example, after adding the some new training examples, you need to train your model. But right now we are not going to do this because we will talk about some more files like stories and domain.yml, and after that we will train our model. In this video, we're going to talk about the domain.yml. So the domain.yml file in Rasa is an important configuration file that defines the domain of your chatbot. It provides a high-level overview of the chatbot's capabilities, including the intents, entities, actions, responses, and some other configuration settings. Now, these are some key components. Now, the first one is intents. It defines the different intents that your chatbot can understand. Intents represents the user's intention or goals, such as greeting, asking for help, or making a reservation. We already have talked about the intents. We have entities that we can define inside the domain.yml. It specifies the entities that your chatbot can extract from user input. Entities represent a specific piece of information that are relevant to the conversation, such as, for example, dates, locations, or names. Also, you can define responses inside the domain.yml. So responses contains the predefined responses that your chatbot can use during the conversation. These responses can be associated with specific actions and can include text, buttons, images, or any other content you want the chatbot to display. Also, we have actions. It specifies the actions that the chatbot can take in response to user input actions. So actions, for example, can be sending a response, making an API call, running custom code, or activating an external system. Also, we have a slots. So you can use a slot for defining of the slots, and it stores the information and maintain the conversation state. Slots can hold values that are collected from user input or generated during the conversation. They allow the chatbot to remember information across different turns of the dialogue. So we can say that the slots are the memory of the chatbot. We have forms. It represents forms that guide the chatbot to collect specific information from the user. Forms help in gathering structured data by asking a series of questions and validating the user's message. So don't worry, we will practically talk about these concepts, but right now you should know about these concepts. So, and the last one is templates. Templates provides reusable response templates that can be used in different parts of the dialogue. Templates make it easier to manage and reuse common responses throughout the conversation. So we can say that the domain.yml file serves as a central place to define the behavior and capabilities of your chatbot. It's important to keep this file up to date with your chatbot's domain to ensure accurate understanding and appropriate responses during the conversation. So right now you can see that this is our domain.yml file, and we already have talked that we have intents inside the domain.yml, we have responses, we have some configuration settings. Right now we haven't added, for example, entities or any actions like this. We will add those. So right now, for example, if you see in our inilio.yml in the previous video, we have created an intent at name of order pizza. So for example, if a user says for the chatbot that I want to order pizza or can I get a pizza, we need to give a response for that. So to do this, we want to create a static response inside our domain.yml. Okay, so you can see that we have some responses. If the user say, for example, like hello or like these conversations, then for example this hey how are you will be triggered. Okay, so also we have user thanks that we already have created. Now we want to create another one that is for the ordering pizza. Okay, so we can just do that in here, so in this section, and I can just say user, and for example you can just call it whatever you want. You can just call it order, for example. Okay, or we can say order pizza. And then here we need to give the text. So So let's just give the text, for example, sure. So for example, I will order pizza for you, or like this. Okay, so you can just give it whatever you want. Or we can say, for example, sure, for example, what kind of pizza you want, what kind of pizza you want. Okay, so now you can see that we have defined a response. So for example, if the user says, I want to order a pizza, or let's order a pizza, then this will be the response. Okay, so also it's important to, when you're creating new intents, you need to add those intents inside the intent in the intent section. Okay, so we have greet, goodbye, thanks, and also we need to add the order pizza in here. Okay, so right now let's just train the data and let's check that what will happen. Okay, so here I can just say Rasa train. So we need to train our model, and let's just wait. So let's wait, and there will be a warning. By this reason, I want to show you that warning. So let's wait. So now the first warning is this, that user order pizza is not used in any story or rule. So there's no problem because we haven't created any rule or any story. Okay, so because we haven't talked about that. So now we can see that the training model has been finished, and there is no problem. We have the training. Okay, but now we have something that I want to just tell you. Okay, so now in here, so this was the first one, that the order pizza is not used any story and or rule, or for example, the order pizza is not used in any story or rule. Okay, so now what we so right now we are not going to just talk about the stories.yml. But also what we need to do, if you see in our inlu.yml, we have I want to order a pizza, but also we have the entity, so food entity. Now, when you're creating an entity, you need to define that entity inside the domain.yml. Okay, so now in here we have intents, and the section we can just say entities, and then the entities we need to give the name of the entity. Okay, so that is food. Okay, so that is food, and after that, now we want to just train our model again. So Rasa train. So let's wait. Okay, so now again the model is trained, and now let's just open the Rasa shell. We want to check that our chatbot is working or not. So I can just say Rasa shell, because I want to check that, for example, if I say I want to order a pizza, we have this response. So sure, what kind of pizza you want or not. Okay, so let's just wait. Okay, so now the bot is loaded. So if I say hello, now we have hello in here. So for example, you can see that, hey, how are you? And we have our greet intent. And if we check our stories.yml, we have, for example, intent greet. If a user say hello, then there will be user greet. That in the domain.yml, we have this one, hey, how are you? Okay, so but now if I say, for example, this intent, I want to order a pizza. So I want to order a pizza. So you can see that we are not receiving any response and it's telling us, hey, how are you? And that's because we have the training examples and we need to specify our stories.yml. We need to create a story for that. And in the next video, we will talk about that. So now let's talk about the stories.yml file. Now the stories.yml file in Rasa is used to define the conversational flow of your chatbot. It represents example conversations or dialogues between the user and the chatbot by specifying a sequences of user inputs or intents and the corresponding bot actions. Now let's talk about the key components of stories.yml. So the first one is the stories. A story represents a single conversation or dialogue flow. It consists of a sequence of steps where each step defines an interaction between the user and the chatbot. Steps can include user intents, bot actions, or bot utterances. Another one is user intents. So user intents represent the user's intention or goals at each step of the conversation. These are defined based on the expected user input, such as greeting, asking a question, or providing feedback. Another one is bot actions. So bot actions represent the actions taken by the chatbot in response to user input. Actions can include sending a response, making an API call, running custom code, or activating external systems. And the last one is bot utterances. So bot utterances define the chatbot's responses to user inputs. These are predefined responses specified in the domain.yml file that the chatbot can use to generate a response during the conversation. So we can say that the stories.yml file helps you define the different paths or flow that your chatbot can follow based on the user's input and the chatbot's action. By creating different stories, you can cover different use cases and scenarios to train your chatbot to respond appropriately in a real conversation. It's important to note that the stories defined in the stories.yml file serve as training data for the dialogue management model. Rasa uses this data to learn and predict the next best action or response based on the conversation story. Overall, we can say the stories.yml file plays an important role in training your chatbot's dialogue model and shaping the conversational behavior of your chatbot. Now, let's check it practically. So right now, you can see that this is our chatbot. If I say I want to order pizza, then it's not working. Even though we have the training data, like I want to order a pizza or can I get a pizza? Also in the domain.yml, we have some responses like, for example, sure, what kind of pizza you want. But right now it's not working because we need to specify the stories. So if I open stories.yml, you can see that we have some stories for example, for the grid, for the express tanks. Now in here, we want to create another one for the order pizza. So I can just say story. You can just write it like this. And I can just say order my pizza, for example. Okay. And after doing that, we need to specify the steps. Okay. So what steps? Now, for example, we need to give the intent, and I can just say intent. So intent. And for example, if a user says the phrases from this order pizza, so I can just paste it in here. So order pizza, then what will be the action? The bot action will be this one. So order pizza. Okay. So now in here, we can just add the action. So it should be in here, and in here I can just say the action, and the action should be this one, order pizza. Okay. So now we have this. So make sure that you have the correct indentation like this. Now after doing that, we want to just train our model, and let me just train that. So I can just say Rasa train, and now let's just wait for the training. Okay, so we have an error because it's not actions, it's action, so it should be action. Now let's do it again, Rasa train. So now we can see that the model is trained. Now we can just say Rasa shell. We want to just open the shell and interact with our chatbot. Okay, so now the bot is loaded, and now if I say hello, for example, right now, it will, for example, trigger the this user grid. And now if I say, for example, I want to order a pizza, so I want to order a pizza, and now, so you can see, sure, what kind of pizza you want. Okay, so now this is the domain.yml. We have the response from there. So sure, what kind of pizza you want, you can change it whatever you want. But now you can see that our chatbot is working, and if I say buy, and it will say me that buy. In this lesson, I want to learn about the entity extraction. So entity extraction in Rasa is an important aspect of natural language understanding, or NLU, within the Rasa framework. It's the process of identifying and extracting specific pieces of information or entities from user messages during a conversation with a chatbot or virtual assistant. So we already have mentioned that entities represent important information that the chatbot needs to extract to understand the user's request accurately. Rasa uses a two-step process for entity extraction. So the first one is intent recognition. Now the first step is intent recognition, where Rasa determines the primary intention or purpose behind the user's message. This is achieved using the NLU component of Rasa, which maps user input to predefined intents. And another one is entity extraction. So once the intent is recognized, Rasa then focuses on entity extraction. It identifies and extracts the specific pieces of information from the user's message that are relevant to the recognized intent. Now, Rasa uses machine learning models like, for example, CRF or DIET to perform entity extraction, and this makes it capable of handling complex entity recognition tasks. Now, we already have saw an example. So, for example, in the user message like book a table for 2 people at an Italian restaurant in New York on Friday, Rasa would recognize the intent as, for example, restaurant reservation, and extract different entities like, for example, a number of people, location, and also date. So now we can say that the entity extraction enables the chatbot to gather important details from the user's request, which can then be used to generate appropriate responses or trigger actions, such as making a reservation, providing relevant information, or carrying out any other tasks. So now this is our simple chatbot that we already have created. Now to enable entity extraction in Rasa, you need to define entity labels in your training data. So we already have done this, so you can see that we have the labels in our training data, and you can annotate the entities in user messages using the Rasa Markdown format or JSON format, and provide examples for each entity type to train the NLU model. So you can see that we already have done this process. We have the food entity, and we have annotated with the pizza. Also in the domain.yml, we have added our entities. Okay, so now we want to extract the food entity. To extract the food entity from user input in Rasa, we can utilize the Rasa entity extraction capabilities. So first of all, right now we have saw a lot of files in here. I think all files, but we haven't saw the actions.py file for right now. Okay, so let's just open the actions.py file. So in here you can see that let's just remove these comments from here. I can just remove that. And let me just uncomment this. Okay, so now the actions.py file, so that we have in here, it's a Python file used in Rasa projects to define custom actions. Actions in Rasa are used to implement logic and perform actions based on user inputs, intents, and entities. Now, the actions.py file typically contains a class that extends the action class. So you can see that it's a class that extends from the action class from the Rasa SDK. Also, this class represents a custom action that can be executed by the Rasa chatbot. Now inside the inside this actions.py file, you define a custom actions by implementing the necessary methods, and there are two methods. So the first one is the name. So this method returns the name of the custom action. The name should be unique and match the name used in the domain.yml. So in here, for example, it's returning the action hello world action hello world. Okay, so we will change this, but right now it's this method returns the name of the custom action. So for example, this will be action hello world. And also we have run. Now this method contains the logic for the custom action. It takes and parameters like dispatcher, tracker, and domain to access and manipulate the conversation flow, extract entities, send responses, and perform other tasks. Okay, so now what we need to do, the first thing is that we are going to change this name. So for example, we can change, you can remove this. So for example, we can just change this name first. It should be, for example, extraction or extract food entity, and this should be, for example, action underscore extract food entity. Okay, so this is the name of the custom action that we want to give. Now in here, so we are going to just remove this. So let me just remove this. So we need the run. And here what we want to do, we want to just first we need to just extract the food entity. Okay, so in here I can just say food entity, and we can just use next in here. So next, and in the next, so this should be in here or in this section, there is no problem. Okay, so now in the next we want to get the entity value. Okay, so we can just use the tracker and we can just say dot get latest entity values, and that is, so the first parameter is food, and also for the this we can give it none. Okay, so it needs two parameters, the food and also none. Okay, so this is optional. So now we have the food entity. After that, we want to check that if we have the food entity. So if we have the food entity, then what we want to do, we want to just dispatch a message. Okay, so you can just say dispatch a user message, and we can give a text in here. So for example, I can just say you have selected, and we can just give the food entity in here. So food entity as your food choice. Okay, so as your food choice, for example. And in the else case, we can just say, so dispatcher dot user message, and we can give the text, for example, I'm sorry, I could not, so I could not detect the food choice. Okay, and then what we want to do, we want to just return. Okay, so we can just say return something, or we can just return empty list in here. So now we are done with this, and we have this. So after doing that, what we need to do, we need to just add our this action inside the domain.yml. Okay, so now in domain.yml, we, alongside with the entities responses, and here we want to create our, we can just say actions, and we need to specify the action. Okay, and the action is, so this action. Okay, we can add it in here. And also we need to include the custom action in our stories.yml. Okay, so now we don't need to use this static response, so in the domain.yml, so this one, and instead of that we want to just use this action extract food entity. And in the stories.yml, for example, if a user says order pizza, okay, instead of this order pizza that we have, this static one, we can use our this extract food entity. So let's just paste it in here. Okay, so also, for example, when you're using custom actions, we need to enable something in the config.yml. Okay, so not config.yml, but in the in the credentials. So right now we haven't learned about the config.yml. So we need to just enable so let me just check it. Okay, not credentials, sorry. In the endpoints.yml, we need to enable the action endpoint. Okay, so when you're using the custom actions, then you need to enable this. Okay, so now I think we are done. Let's just train our model. So in here I can just say Rasa train. And if there is an error, then we will see that error in here. So now it's training the model. Let's wait. Okay, so finish training component. Okay, so you can see that your Rasa model is trained and that's saved. And now we need to just open Rasa shell. So also because we are using custom action, we need to also run that. Okay, so in another terminal, you can just say Rasa run actions. Okay, so now the action is running, and now let's just wait for the shell. Okay, so now let's just say, for example, hello. Okay, so it's telling that, hey, how are you? Now, if I just open nlu.yml, so for example, now if I say, I want to order a pizza, so let me just say, I want to order a pizza. So you can see that you have selected pizza as your food choice. Now this is the response that we are receiving from our actions. Okay, so from here, now this is not this static response that we have used to order pizza. Now we can just remove this and we don't need this. Okay, because now we have the response in here. Okay, so you have selected, for example, as your food choice. Okay, and you can see that it's working, and we have implemented our Actions.py file like this. So now let's add some more functionality to our chatbot. So this is our simple chatbot that we have implemented the custom actions. Now we're going to open our nlu.yml and we are going to just define some more intents in here. So for example, I can just create one for the order, for example, order food. For example, I can just give it like this, and we can just add examples in here. So I want to order a food. So can I get some food, please? And let's order some food. Okay, and for example, like this, I can just give it 3 training data. And also we want to create another intent in here, so let me create another one. And for example, I can just say inform food. And for the examples, for example, I can just add some examples like we can just say stick and the entity is food. And let me just copy this and paste it. So we have, for example, burger, and the entity is food. For example, we have sushi. We can add some training data like this, okay? And pasta, okay? So now we need to bring some changes to our Actions.py file. So let's just open that. So we have extract food entity in here. Now we want to create another one. So let me just create another class. So I can just say class order food action, and we can just extend from the action, and in here we need to give the name, and for the name we can just return the name of the action. So that is action order food. So order food, and we can just copy this run from here and paste it in here, okay? So this is our run, and in here we want to just dispatch a message. So dispatcher.user message, and we can just give the text. So for example, show which kind of food would you like to order, okay? And we can just return. We are going to create another class, and I can just say confirm order action. We can give the name, so we can just return, for example, action underscore confirm underscore order, okay? And also we can just copy this in here. So now we can extract the food entity in here also. So for example, we can just copy this, or even we can just copy all of them, and like this, let's just paste it in here. So we can extract that, and in here we can just say, for example, I have ordered food entity, for example, for you. And in the else case, we can just say, I'm sorry, I could not, for example, detect the food choice. We can just leave it like this, okay? So now we have created some more actions, custom actions. Now we need to bring some changes to our storage.yml. So we can just open this. Now we want to bring some changes to order my pizza. So for example, in here, when we say, for example, or when we ask from the chatbot that so order pizza. So for example, if we say, for example, I want to order pizza, or that's why we're going to use order food, because we have created this in here, and definitely we can remove this, or okay, so we don't need this intent. We are going to just use this intent, okay? And now in the storage.yml we can just give this. So for example, if we say I want to order a food, or can I get some food, or let's order some food. Now on that case, what we want to do, we want to just call the action order food, okay? So this action, okay? So this, what will be the message? That show which kind of food you would like to order, okay? So we want to just call this, and also we need to add this in the domain.yml. First, let me just add that in here like this, even though we don't need this one, but we will leave it. And also this one. So let's just open domain.yml, okay. And also we have forgot to add these two intents in here. So this is our intent, and we have another one that's okay. So we have the order pizza, we have order food, so order food, and also inform food. Okay, so now let's just create our stories.yml. Okay, so for example, if we say I want to order food, we want to just call this action extract food entity that that will be like this. So action order food, sorry, this should be order food, and then here we have the show which kind of food would you like to order. Okay, and after that we will specify the food. Okay, so in the nlu.yml we will say, for example, a steak or a burger. Okay, so now we can just create another step in here, or in this step we want to create our intent, and we need to call this intent inform food. The user will say their food, and after that what action will be, we want to call the action confirm order. Okay, so for example we will say that I have ordered that food for you, so action confirm order. So let's just add the action in here. Okay, so it's simple. Okay, so we have created two intents, so we are not using this one because this is annotated with the pizza. So I have order food and inform food. Okay, so in the order food I want to order food, and in the inform food we have the type of the foods like steak or burger or sushi or salad. Okay, and we have created two new actions. Now the first one is the order food action and also confirm order action. Now for example, in the stories.yml we have like this story. If the user says, for example, I want to order a food, then what action will be triggered? The custom action that will be triggered, that is action order food. The bot will say that sure, which kind of food would you like to order? After that, the user will say, for example, these foods like steak, burger, or salad, and then what will be? This action confirm will be called. Okay, so this will be the text, I have ordered this food for you. Okay, so this is our story.yml. Now I think let's just train our model. So Rasa train. So now the training has been completed, finished training, and your Rasa model is trained and saved in here. So let's just, now let's just say Rasa shell. Also we need to run our action, so Rasa run actions. Let's just wait. Okay, so now let's just check our chatbot. So for example, I want to just say I want to order a food. Okay, so you can see, sure, which kind of food would you like to order? Okay, so there is a misspelling, there is no problem. So this is the response that we are receiving from the action order food. Okay, sure, which kind of food would you like? And in the stories.yml we have defined this. So if we say I want to order a food, then this action order food, that the message is sure which kind of food would you like to order, will be triggered. So now we have the inform food. Okay, so if you see, for example, we can say steak, or for example burger. Okay, so let me just say burger. So now you can see I have ordered burger for you. Okay, and this is the message from the action confirm order. Okay, and for example, if I say again hello, so and it's telling that, hey, how are you? And for example, I can just say, can I get some food? Can I get some food? So sure, which kind of food would you like to order? So for example, I can just say salad like this. And you can see I have ordered salad for you, and this is working. In this lesson, we want to create our Flask project, and also we are going to create our Rasa chatbot. So first of all, what is Flask? Now, Flask is a micro web framework for Python, and it's designed to make it easy for building web applications and APIs. It's known for its simplicity, flexibility, and minimalistic design, and it allows developers to quickly create web applications without imposing too many restrictions or dependencies. Now, there are some key features for the Flask. The first one is lightweight. Flask is a lightweight framework that does not impose a specific directory structure or require the use of particular libraries. This flexibility allows developers to structure their projects as they see fit. The second one is extensible. So Flask follows the pluggable architecture, which means that developers can add functionality through Flask extensions. There are different extensions that you can use in Flask. For example, we have for database integration, for form handling, for authentication, and many more. The third one is routing. So Flask provides a simple way to define URL routes and associate them with Python functions called view functions. These view functions handle incoming requests and return responses. Another one is templating. So Flask supports template engines like Jinja 2, and it enables developers to create dynamic HTML templates with placeholders for data that will be filled at runtime. And built-in development server. So Flask comes with a built-in development server, and this makes it easy to test and debug applications during development. Another one is RESTful support. So Flask is commonly used to build RESTful APIs due to its simplicity and flexibility. It can handle HTTP methods like get, post, put, and delete. Another one is secure. So Flask provides utilities to protect against common web application vulnerabilities like CRF or CSRF, or we can say cross-site request forgery, and also XSS, or we can say cross-site scripting. And the last one is minimal boilerplate. So Flask keeps boilerplate code to a minimum, and it allows developers to focus on writing applications logic instead of setting up and configuring the framework. So now let's create a practical simple project with Flask, and also we will create our Rasa chatbot also. So now I already have created a Rasa Flask directory, and I'm going to just say Rasa init. So first we want to just create our simple project. Okay, so we want to just create it in the current directory, and we don't want to train any, or we can just train our model because we are not going to add any functionality for this. Let's just train the model, and it's training our initial model. So let's wait. So now the model is trained. Also, I have opened the Rasa shell, so you can see this is our basic project, and it's just a simple project. For example, if we say hello, and it will say, hey, how are you? So if I say, are you a bot? It will say that I'm a bot powered by Rasa. So we're not going to add any functionality, but you can just add that. Now the main focus is on integrating Rasa chatbot with Flask. Okay. Now, we already have talked about the Flask. The first thing is that we need to install Flask. So we can just say pip install Flask. And also we are going to just add a Python file. Let me just call it app.py file. So now the Flask is installed, and now what we want to do, so in here in the app.py file, so we can just say from Flask, we are going to import Flask and also render template. Okay, so render template, and now let's create our app in here. So I can just say app Flask, now we need to create our route in here. So this should be index route, and I can just say div index, and in here we want to just return our template. Okay, so render template, and that should be index.html. okay, so right now we haven't created this template, but we will create that. Okay, so now let's just create our development server. So if underscore name, and in here we can just say app.run and the debug to true, so debug to true, and also we can just give a port, so for example port 3000. Okay, so now we have this. After that, what we want to do, we want to create a directory at name of templates in our this Rasa Flask project. We need to create this index.html. So inside that we want to create an HTML file called index. Okay, so now let's write our index.html. So this should be the title, so I can just say Rasa and Flask chatbot, and we are going to just copy some codes. So now the first one is that this we need to use these imports. We are going to use Bootstrap and also the jQuery. Okay, so you need to just add that in here, and after that we will use this custom CSS, but right now we need to create a class container in here. So in this section I can just say div, so div class container, so container, and inside this div class container we want to just create our h1 tag, so that is welcome to my chatbot it will be, and after that we need to just add our button for the chatbot. Okay, so let's just add this in here. So this will be a button, so this is the button ID, that is chat widget button, and the type is button, and we have the class that is btn primary. We're using a bootstrap class, and that's rounded circle, and we want it should be position should be fixed, and also it should be at the bottom, and we need to just give 20 pixel, and it should be 20 pixel to the right, bottom 20 pixel and right 20 pixel. Okay, so right now if I just save this, okay, so let me save it and let's just run this. So we can just right click, we can just run our, so you can see that it's running on this port. So let me just copy this and let's just open that. Okay, so right now you can see that we have welcome to my chatbot and we have a button in here. Now we need to just add a style for this because it's a little not looking good, and we have a style in here, so that's chat widget button, so we have that ID in here, but let's just use that. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this and I'm going to just paste it in here in the head section. Okay, so let's save it, and now if I check it, so you can see now the button is looking good. Right now it's not we don't have any functionality for this. Okay, so this was for the button. After that we need to create the chat box itself. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this and paste it in this section. So in here we have a chat ID, that's chat widget, and we have a class, so we're using a bootstrap class. The position is fixed, we have shadow, none, and also we have a style of bottom 100 pixel, right 20 pixel, and this is the width. Okay, so element div is not closed. I think we also need another div in here. Okay, okay, so now after that we have a div class. It is for the header, the text is white, and we are writing just chatbot, and also we have a button on there. This is the ID. At the top we will have a button that should be for the closing of the chat box. Okay, now the type is button and the class is btn close float end, and this is the ARIA label. Okay, so this will be the button. And also, so right now if I save this and if I check it, it's not working because by clicking off that button we want this chat box. And this is the place that the chat message will be appeared in here. So we are going to use this, and we can just paste it in here. So it's it's div class card body, and this is the chat widget message, and this is the place that the chat message will be appended in here. Okay, and then we need to just create the card footer. So our complete chat boxes inside the footer. Okay, inside a card. Okay, inside the card. So this is the card footer. We have an input text, and this should be the form control, and this is the for example, we're saying that type your message. Okay, so this is the basic in HTML that we need. So right now if I just run this, nothing will happen, and if I click on this, we're not seeing anything. Okay, or we can see jQuery code. So now in here we want to create a script, so we can just say script. And inside the script, first we want to just create code for the chat widget button click event. So for example, if we click on that button, on this rounded circle button, what we want to do, we want to just open the chat box. Okay, so for that we can just say $document, and I can just say .ready, and we need to just create our function in here. So now up in here, what we want to do, for example, if the chat widget button is clicked, so we have that in here. So if this button is clicked, this chat widget button, what we want to do. Okay, so I can just say if the chat widget button .on, so if that's clicked, we want to trigger this function. And on this function, what we want to do, we want to just toggle this the chat box, this chat widget that we have. So this chat widget. So in here, I can just say $ and this chat widget. Okay, so .toggle class, and we can just make it dnan. Okay, okay, so right now if I just save it and if I just check it, so you can see that right now this button is not working. When I click on this, you can see that the chat box is in here. Right now we can just write, but nothing happens. By clicking off this, you can see that the chat widget box is appearing in here. Now let's work on this close button. So in here we can just say if we click on this, on that close sign, so this chat widget close button, .on, if we click on that, what we want to do, we want to just use this one. So let me just copy and paste that in here, and we want to just say add class. Okay, so add class. Okay, so now if I just refresh it and if I go here, so you can see that now I can close that and it's working. In the previous lesson, we have created our simple design, and also we have used jQuery code. Now in this lesson, we want to handle our user input. So right now we can see that this is our simple chatbot. If I click on this, we have the chatbot and we have a close button. But if I write something in here, if I hit enter, nothing happens. Now we want to create this functionality for our chatbot. So now in here, what we want to do, so I can just say $. Okay, so if we, for example, we need to target this chat widget input, so this chat widget input, so I can just say chat widget input. Okay, so if we key press on that, so I can just say key press. If we key press on that case, we want to trigger a function, so I can just say function, and in that function we want to pass the event, so we want to capture the event. And in here what we want to do, we want to check that if event dot which is 13, on that case what we want to do, we want to just get the value from the chat widget input, so I can just say let user message, and I can just say chat widget input. I want to get the value from that, so dot val. And after that, after getting that, we need to just clear the input field, and I can just say chat widget input, and I want to just say dot val, so dot val, and make it empty, okay, or clear that. So now we have that the value, so in the user message, now we can just append that to the so I've copied the code. We can append that to the chat widget message, okay, to this chat widget message that we have created in here. Okay, so we are going to append to that. So we can just say chat widget message dot append, and we want to give just a strong tag in here, and we can just say for example, the user message. So now let's save it and let's check that it's working. So if I refresh it, and for example, if I say hello, hit enter, okay, nothing happens. And let's check that where's the problem. So we have the chat widget input. It is the same that we have in here, so it should be in here, chat widget input. So let me just copy this and chat widget input. Okay, so we are using chat widget button. That's not button, sorry, that is input. Okay, I think okay, sorry, this is the top one. Okay, so we are working on this. So chat widget input dot key press function event, if event dot, oh, it is dot which, I think that was the problem, chat widget input, and let's save it and let's just run it again. So if I say hello, you can see hello, and if I say like this, okay, so hit enter, now this is working. Okay, and we have the message in here, and just the problem wasn't here, it is event dot which. So now it's working and there is no problem. And let's add something in here, for example, handle user input in the chat box. Okay, in this lesson we want to learn that how we can send user messages to the server. So to do that, we need to bring some changes. The first thing is this, that we need to add a Rasa API URL. Okay, so I already have added the codes in here. Let me just copy this and paste it in this section. So we have Rasa API URL, and it's typically used to store the URL of the Rasa server's REST API endpoint. When you run a Rasa server, exposes different API endpoints that can be used to interact with the chatbot and send messages for processing and receive responses. So you can see that in here we have webhooks, REST webhook. Now, this is the specific endpoint of the Rasa server's REST API that is used to send user messages and receive responses in a RESTful manner. Now, when the Rasa server is running, your chatbot application can make HTTP post requests to this URL, sending user messages as JSON payloads, and the data server and the Rasa server will process the messages and return the chatbot's responses as a JSON object. Okay, so by this reason, we need to add that in here. After that, what we want to do, we need to add another route in here, and that is for the webhook route. So I can paste it in here, and first we need to just import the request and also JSONify from Flask. Also, we're going to import requests. Okay, so now in here you can see that the route is webhook and the method is post, and you can see that in here we are getting the user message as a JSON, and also we are printing that. And in here we are sending user message to Rasa and get bots response. Okay, so we can just use a post request to send the user message to the Rasa server. Okay, and after that we are receiving the response, and we are going to convert that to the JSON, and we can just print that Rasa response in here. Okay, and in here we are just getting the text of the response. If there is response, if there is not response, we can just say that sorry, I didn't understand that. Okay, so for example, if we have something that's not trained. Okay, and at the end we want to just return the response as a JSONify, as the bot response. Okay, so we have this. After that, what we want to do, we want to just create an Ajax request. Okay, we need to create that. So let me just copy that and paste it, and let me just copy this, and in here I can just open my index.html, and in this section, so in this section we can use that. Okay, so let me paste it in here. So now this is an Ajax request, and send the user messages to the server and get bots response. Okay, so the type is post, the URL is webhook, the content type is application JSON, and in here this is the data. We are stringifying them, message to the user message, and this is the success message, and we are getting the response from the data, and we are saving that in here, and at the end we are appending that to the chat box. Okay, so we are using $chatbox chat widget message, and we are appending that bot response in there. Okay, and also if there is an error, we can just handle that in here. So now let's just save it, and now if I just refresh this, and if I say for example hello, oh, you can see that, hey, how are you? Okay, so if I say for example, are you a bot? I'm a bot powered by Rasa. So if I say I am sad, you can see that here's something to cheer you. Okay, so now these are the default training data. Now let's just add our own training data in here. For example, let me just open, this is the terminal, and okay, so now in here what we want to do, we are going to just open our nlu.yml, and in the nlu.yml we are going to just add an intent in here. Okay, so let me just copy the intent, and let me paste it in here. So this is ask name, for example, and we can just add that in the domain.yml. So let me just close these, open domain.yml, and let's just add that in here. And also we need to just create, for example, a static response. So for example, in here I can just say and we need to just give the text, for example, welcome to the course, my name is Rasa Chatbot. Okay, So now let's just train our model. So Rasa train. So let's wait. Oh, I forgot to add the stories, my stories. So by this reason I have quitted that. And in here I can create a story. So story, for example, I can just say ask name, and we need to add the steps. So steps. Now the intent is ask name. So ask name, and the action is this one. Okay, so in the domain.yml we have this one. Okay, so now let's just train the model again. So Rasa train. So now the model is trained. Let's say Rasa run. Let's just run this. So now we can see Rasa server is up and running. And now if I just refresh it, so for example, if I say hello, so hey, how are you? And for example, if I say like, please give me your name, or what's your name? So for example, what is your name? Okay, so welcome to the course. My name is Rasa Chatbot. Now we have a problem in here. We don't have any scrolling in here. So if I add messages like this, so great, carry on. Okay, so you can see that we have the chat box. The chat box is not looking good. Okay, so we need to add a scrolling functionality for this. To do that, we need to open our index.html, and we have a style in here. We are going to add another style in here. So we want to add one for the chat widget. Okay, and also for this chat widget, and also another one for the chat widget message. Okay, so for this chat widget message. So now let me just save it, and now if I just refresh it, okay, so if I say hello, what is your name? So for example, let's just add some data in here. Okay, so now you can see that we have a scrolling functionality, and we can just scroll that. Okay, so you can see that now the chat, it's scrolling, and now it's working, and our chatbot is working, and we have integrated our chatbot with a Flask project. Now you can use any project, any complex project, and the integration will be the same.